Good evening. Talking about consciousness. In our series of conversations with people who teach about consciousness and awareness and about the change in attitude of people, tonight we talk with Isaac Shapiro. You are American?
Yes.
And how do you describe yourself?
Well, it's an interesting question that you ask, because in the whole invitation of what I'm about is to see who you are. So when you ask to talk about myself, I can talk about my past, or I can talk about my body, or I can talk about various experiences I've had, but none of that is really who I am. So you're speaking about consciousness. Consciousness is actually who I am. And consciousness is expressing as this body-mind activity, you could say, called Isaac Shapiro. But in really looking who I am, I mean, it's clear it's only consciousness.
You mean this is not Isaac Shapiro, though he's a sturdy guy?
Well, this...
Or is he Isaac Shapiro too?
Well, it's like this, you know. What most of us do is identify with our bodies and with our minds, yeah? And this identification, this ability that we have, that human beings specifically have, animals don't have it. Animals can think, but what human beings have is the ability to think about thinking, which we call intellect.
But is this also the same as self-awareness?
Yes, so this ability to think about thinking produces self-awareness. And what happens is actually this ability actually only came about, people are guessing now, about 10 to 12,000 years ago with the advent of agriculture. The whole way that we lived, we went from hunter-gatherers to living in, to farming communities, and then that started little settlements and towns. And so we went, and the development went to being able to think about thinking. Before that we didn't have that, actually. So
are you saying that, say, a monkey will think but not think about himself?
Correct, because like a chimpanzee can think clearly, and many animals can think and actually can distinguish things, and you can train them to
use tools and stuff?
All different things like this. There's a lot of experimentation going on with this right now. But what man has the ability to do is think about thinking. So as soon as we can think about thinking, this produces the ability to have good and bad, right and wrong. See? So we can have a thought and we can go, this is a good thought and this is a bad thought. Or I like this and I don't like that. So
you mean that an animal, for instance, has no distinction between good and bad? He kills...
Absolutely none.
But an animal would know, for instance, if he goes and drinks water, that some water is bad and some water is good.
But this is instinctual. This is purely instinctual. And so what happens with us, and what's happening right now actually in the last few years, there's some scientists that are trying to find out what is the sense of I that people have. You know,
sense of I, is that
yes.
what Freud and others refer to as ego? Or?
What people call ego, yes. So we have a sense of I. And what's interesting is that this sense of I, you asked me, how we got into this conversation was you asked me to speak about myself. So this sense of I, we know we have it in waking state and in dream state. But as soon as we go to deep sleep, we don't have a sense of I anymore in deep sleep. So, and this you can check in every culture. You ask somebody.
Wait a moment, in deep sleep, is that where I do dreaming?
No, in no dreams.
When there's no dreaming?
Yeah, so we have three states. We have waking state, dream state, and then deep sleep. So these three states we go through
every day.
Every day. So in deep sleep, you can check, and I'm not asking you to believe anything, I'm asking you to see in your own experience. In your experience in deep sleep, do you have any sense of I? Any sense of I am? Do you have any sense of time?
Well, in deep sleep, I suppose that's when I come switched off.
When you switched off. Okay.
When I'm not dreaming, when I'm dreaming, I have a sense of I know where I'm going. Sometimes I can even become aware of it. I can steer it,
Yes, correct.
easily.
Now in deep sleep, all this disappears, right? Everything disappears. So in deep sleep, there's no sense of time. There's no sense of even who you're sleeping next to. There's no sense of your senses. No sense of the universe. No sense of I am. So what we can see from this is that this sense of I am actually is an activity that wakes up when we wake up. So this sense of I am that we have, because in the East, they use this analogy of the ocean, that the ocean is the ocean, and on the ocean appear different waves. And these waves appear and disappear. And we call them wave. But actually they ocean, you see. They're no different in the ocean, even though we call them wave. So here we have this process, this fantastic process of life that's going on, that's taken billions of years to happen, this life. And it's expressing as many different life forms, from bacteria through the vertebrates, through every kind of life form, you see. And we know that these atoms that comprise these bodies actually are constantly changing.
Even in about 7 years we are renewed.
Everything is renewed. And the atoms that comprise our bodies actually come from the dinosaurs and they just recycled again and again.
I like the word stardust. We're all stardust somewhere.
Yes. So this life is expressing itself in various life forms continuously. Mm-hmm. And what life is, still nobody can say. No doctor can tell you what life is. No philosopher, nobody can say what it is, except that it's expressing in myriads of ways. And this life is actually who we are. And then we identify with these body minds, but when we look at it, many people think I'm this body, you see. But this body is constantly changing. And you ask a person, are you this body? They say yes. Then you say, okay, now if we remove your hair, are you still yourself? Yes. Okay. If we remove your eyes, are you still you? Yes. Okay, how about the ears? Yes. If we cut off your legs? Some people say, well, a part of me is gone. Yes. But the truth of it is, they still feel like themselves. You see? So we look at this, we see, okay, even the heart can be replaced, you see? So we're not this body. Then we go, am I this mind, you see? Because in between thought, am I still here? Because all that mind is thought. So in between thought, I'm still here.
And that's when you say, when you sleep,
yes,
the body's still there.
The body's still here. The body's here, see? And when I ask you, what's your experience in deep sleep? You said switched off was the word that you...
I would say not switched off, but go to very low volume on my sensor systems, really...
The sensors are not active.
Well, I think they're still active a little bit.
Because if something stimulates them, they kick into life, yes.
Yeah.
But what's your experience? Do you experience time in deep sleep? In dreams there's time.
No, but it's like, what I experience is that I feel like if there's a danger or something like that indeed the system comes to life. It's like automatically triggered.
Yes, but what's your experience in deep sleep? Are you aware of anything? That we've already spoken.
No, I don't think so.
The senses are not active, yeah? Okay, the senses are not active. But what remains over to say, look, I wasn't aware of anything? See, normally we're associated, this body-mind is geared to survival. Every life form has to survive, you see. It has to have some way of knowing what its food is and how to live, you see. So if it's in a bacteria, it's very rudimentary. In human beings, it's progressed to the point where we can think, and we have proreceptors, we have the senses, we can see and hear and all this stuff. And this body is very well geared to take care of itself, you see. Mm-hmm. This happens automatically. We get hungry, we get thirsty, we get sleepy, all these things. And we're in the habit, you see, of saying I. I see, I breathe.
And you say the I is not only the body, it's not only the mind, but what else is there?
I'm saying this sense of I actually is an activity. See, so now what happens is, biologically, this ability to think about thinking has happened fairly recently, and it gave us a tremendous advantage in a certain window frame of time over the other animals, over the other species on the planet. And so we've come to value this thinking process, this thinking about thinking, very highly. In fact, if you look at your own conditioning, you were told think, don't just sit there, think. Use your noodle, all this kind of thing, you see. So people are very identified. The first thing in the morning, they immediately switch on and their mind is running. And with this thinking about thinking process, what comes is anxiety and thinking about the future and the past and running from the past to the future, this movement of mind that we can say, and comparing and judging and analyzing. And what it produces is a sense of anxiety, a sense of fear. Basically, you know, I mean, what we taught is not to trust anybody. And if you look at I'd say almost everybody's experience is they don't trust anybody fully. Not anybody. You know, nobody's quite okay.
Are you implying that the mind is, say, the major tool of separation between us and...
It is. It is the activity of separation. So what happens is we're taught by our culture, by our conditioning, that something's going to make us happy. So what we get involved in then is some strategy to get happy, either to make a lot of money or to get a wife and kids or the right car or the right house or something is going to make us happy. But this is always in the future, you see. After a while, when you've had some of these things, you start to realize, look, it doesn't work. Or, by luck, you have some moment where everything just drops away and you suddenly experience directly that this is just a movie that's being projected.
An illusion.
An illusion.
What the Hindu calls Maya.
Maya, yes. So either this can happen, or, as they say in the East too, you know, when it's a pleasant dream, we don't wake up. But as soon as it becomes a nightmare, then this wakes us up out of our sleep. So this can also happen, that life becomes tough enough or difficult enough that some impetus comes to want to wake up. So then, or we read something, we hear about some enlightened being or some sage or some saint, Buddha, Jesus, somebody, you see, that has transcended this trouble that everybody's in. So now we make this now a goal to get to, you see, we want to get enlightened. But again, just purely mechanically, if we look in this moment, truth has to be here now.
So what you're saying, enlightenment as an if condition, if only things would be better, is ridiculous.
It doesn't work. But this is what's happening, is that we apply our usual strategy now to this new thing, to try and get enlightened. So you go and you find some technique or some guru, some system to try and get there. But
and you say it doesn't work?
No, I'm saying any getting there is going to miss this moment. Because the only moment that you can be enlightened or that you can experience truth is now. And if
so
you have
forget about the future?
If you have any intention or any technique, this means you're trying to get somewhere else other than now. Means that what's going to be in your experience is what you're doing. And what we're talking about here simply is being. That which is prior to any doing, to any activity.
Are you saying that time is, we're talking about the mind as a producer of illusions and separation?
Even of time.
And even of time. The mind produces time and therefore separates us from the now.
Correct. Yes. So now, what this is an invitation to is to see what's here in this instant, you see, beyond time. That in which time appears, that in which, in fact, matter, energy, space, everything appears. So this is the invitation, is to see who you are. So when you ask me, in the now. So when you ask me who I am, I can say, yes, my name is Isaac Shapiro. The name of this blood and bones sack here is Isaac Shapiro, you see.
Yeah, but coming back to that in the now, I think I would like to know where this Isaac Shapiro comes from in real time. Where were you born?
See, even this is a story, because what will happen is I can give you some version of my life story, right? But if you ask me again tomorrow, it'll be different. And and if you've ever told your life story twice, you'll notice that it's always different. So I make a joke of it. I say the past just isn't what it used to be. But if you want it, I was born in South Africa and lived there until I was 19. I had an enlightenment experience at 19.
By yourself or with someone else?
But actually what happened was I took LSD, and through that substance I had an experience that I recognized at the time as being more real than anything else that had happened to me up to that point. And but because it was chemically induced, it passed. But somehow I'd recognize that I had a direct experience of something that was real. So it put me in a position of wanting to
know more about this, to get there.
Yes,
again.
to get there again, or to live like that actually was my interest.
Can you describe this? Now, some people say that this is first mystical experience is the one of oneness, where you feel one with everything.
Complete oneness, unconditional love, a tremendous sense of peace, of well-being, of bliss. Recognizing, it's so hard to put in words. That's the trouble.
Yeah,
because
I put it in words.
Yeah.
Sometimes I say, well, for me, the main feeling, I had a similar experience some time ago, was no separation.
No separation. See,
Now or that.
It's kind of like if you have a piece of wood with a hole in it, and someone asks you to describe the hole, then you say, oh, it's a wooden hole. But you're not describing the hole now, you're describing the surroundings of the hole. So the truth about consciousness is that you can't describe it. You can say what it's not. So we can say it's a wooden hole, you see, but the hole we can never describe.
But so at 19, with the help of some chemical,
Yeah.
you made the first step on the path to, where are you now? Are you having this experience of oneness all the time, or?
I am that.
Yeah, but then I am that too.
You are that also.
And everybody around us.
Everyone is that.
So what separates them from that awareness then?
That they're identified with the activity of their mind. See, what happens is...
They look
like
at their mind as if their mind activity is them.
As if that mind activity is them. So even now, any thought that you're having, you can see. Means that you're not that thought. In between thought, you're still here. In between two thoughts.
I did some Zen meditation, and
Yes.
part of the practice was some thought came up. You
Yes.
were not to linger in it, you would just
Yes.
name it or identify it.
Yes.
This was a thought about
Yes.
how uncomfortable I am. This is a sound, this is about the sound I hear. And then
Yes.
let it pass. Not
Let it
fight
pass.
with it, not
Exactly.
ignore it, but
Yes.
let
So
it pass.
Now, who are you? That's the whole thing. You asked me, who am I? I'm saying, who's noticing these thoughts? Who's noticing these sounds? Let's see. You can say that our perceptions, our senses are all geared to notice objects. See, this is what they for, because they're geared to the survival of this body. So they don't notice space; they notice the objects in space. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
But
again,
don't they notice? Doesn't my mind act? I'm thinking like an antenna. Really, that the thoughts I do think are not mine. I'm just kind of
Correct.
tuning into what's there anyway.
Yes, correct. So where do these thoughts come from?
Sometimes I see that there must be some bigger movement, some bigger cycle, bigger wave, say the ocean, and that I'm just a little part of it. That
Yes, so
at that
what-
moment looks.
So what's actually receiving this thought, you can say, is this body-mind mechanism. It's
Yeah.
like you say, it's like a tuner, yeah? Like you could say a TV, and now it's tuning into the signal that's coming. Correct?
Yeah.
So this body, we've looked at it already and we've seen. This body, mind, normally people identify with. So when someone says, who are you? You say, oh, I'm this thing, you see? But it's clear, are you your shirt? You take your shirt off at night and you put it aside, right? Your hair too. Are you your hair? No, you can shave it off.
Mhm.
So like this, we can go through ears, eyes, the whole thing, you see? So we've got to come back to what is it that's activating this body? There's something that's activating this body, right?
Yeah, well, some people would call that a soul or an atman.
We call it Atman or soul, yeah. But now we can know this intellectually. Because we can read somewhere. Now this is this thing. But now in this moment, this has to be present. You see, you are here. And what's here too is your thoughts and your ideas, your beliefs, all these things. But these are basically objects that appear in your consciousness, you can say. Consciousness is here, and different thoughts, feelings, perceptions appear. So this consciousness itself, we have to bring ourselves to this itself, you see.
How do you do that? You
Well,
give satsang.
I'm saying consciousness is here. Normally we distracted, you see, like this.
But
If
do you
we-
demonstrate that? Do you
It's not a question of demonstrating it. It's more a question of recognizing who I am. And by itself, you see, like this, now we're speaking. So now our conversation is directed towards consciousness, yeah?
Yes.
So now, normally when you say to a person, what is consciousness? The person now tries to find consciousness, you see? So this activity of trying to find consciousness actually gets in the way of experiencing consciousness. Because this activity is now, again, some noise, you can say. You can't hear silence with noise, you see? So any activity will not be able to know activitylessness. Clear? So for one moment, and for one instant, you have to find the gap in between thought. And to find it, I mean, you don't have to do anything. To recognize this gap in between thought means simply not doing anything for an instant.
Welcoming what is.
Just being, you could say.
Being.
Yeah, being. So
Now
in this instant,
yeah.
in this instant here, in between thought, when you're not trying to judge or compare or get anywhere, no intention, no effort, just here. What's here? In this instant, you see? What's your experience? Not anything you've read, not anything you've heard, just here now, when you don't do anything for a microsecond, what's here?
And does that change people?
You tell me, first you tell me what your experience is.
Well, you're talking LSD. When I look at you, and I let it sink in, because this is true. I'm building a shield around me and around me, because I have kind of a goal. I want to get somewhere with this interview and whatever.
Yes.
So build a when I let go of it,
Yes.
you become a little bit like reality in a distorted way.
Uh-huh.
And I've seen it with other people.
Yes.
The boundaries between my reality observation, which is really my synthesis, this has to be there and this has to be there and it's so far away, kind of is distorted. Which is a visual effect, but I know it's like
Yes.
a deeper
So now,
thing.
even deeper than this distortion, something can see this distortion, you see?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have to go deeper than any perception, you see? Perception is still being processed through the mind. So deeper than any perception means you're aware of every perception. Eyes open, you hear. Eyes closed, you're still here, right?
Yeah.
So now, that is the subject, you can say, that which is perceiving, that which is aware of any perception.
Yeah.
Speak about this. Very good. You speak about this then. What is this? For one instant, you see, your mind cannot grasp it.
Oh, I know it is a state of that. I can get into the state of oneness.
Yes.
Yeah. Now that's nice.
So no, wait. Is there an I that gets into the state? We have to be very careful here. See?
Well, it feels as if my mind does a deliberate attempt to kind of switch something out of the way. It's kind of removing it.
Yes.
But the fact I made a poem about is that sometimes it's too late to think about time.
Yes.
At the moment you think that you already passed it.
Very, very nice. Very,
Yes,
very
so-
clear. Very
Yeah.
beautiful. So now the thing is this. So this constant activity of mind, you see, that we valued so highly, we pick it up again. And we pick it up again. And this is what's known in the East as vasanas. You could say mental habits.
Chatterboxing.
Chatterboxing in the mind, you see. So, but the main thing is that you recognize this instant in between thought, before this chattering wants to label it.
Before
Because
the person on your shoulder said, "Hey,
Hey,
what are you doing?"
Hey,
here?"
that was beautiful. Wow, there was nothing for an instant and it was really far out, you see, right?
Yeah, well, what I feel is that someone sitting on my shoulder says, "Hey, wait a moment, you're on television and people are going to think you're a bit of a wacko," which is fine. Now, okay, so
this
we can
instant,
experience this moment.
So this instant, you see, what happens is, in this instant you recognize nothing, you could say, or everything. There's a feeling of oneness. So this is, you could say, the substratum on which this movement of mind is appearing. The intellect, the other processes are going on. And as long as we don't recognize this, you see, as long as we keep running with the thought of this habit of mind, we're bound to our, you could say, our conditioning. And our conditioning, basically, look, none of us chose our parents, so that's the genetic aspect of who we are, and none of us chose the way we were brought up.
I don't know, I disagree there, but
so
that's the point.
Well, it's when, even this, you see, I mean, we can go into the whole idea of choice.
Mm-hmm.
And if we want to look at that, we can see that choice is another idea of the mind, because in this moment we don't have choice. This moment is the way it is.
Well, I say that free choice is, the sort of time divides between the free choice and the determinism that things have to be the way they are.
So then let's look together and see. When can you choose?
I have a hard time seeing when I can choose. People tell me I have choice, and
yes, that's what I'm saying.
I don't see the choice.
That's what I'm saying, because in truth, choice is an idea that in the next moment you can choose. You see, but by the time the next moment comes, it's already that moment.
Yeah, so it's a sort of time really.
Yeah, so scientists are actually now working with this thing. They're trying to find where in the brain this feeling of I originates. What is the neural correlate of the I am sense? And this is the latest thing that's going on in scientific circles now, because this is, in the last 10 years, they've learned more about the brain than they've known in the whole history of mankind. So they're trying to find this now. And in fact, about 2 months ago in the Spiegel in Germany, which is a major mainstream news magazine, they had an article of Who Am I?
But isn't this funny, because you say this is the most modern research, and more I know about the old times, about the Vedas.
The sages and all this.
It's like these guys knew all along.
They knew it. All the sages have said the same thing. All the sages from every tradition always spoke the same thing. They had direct experience. So the scientists now are trying to find out, what is this I? You see, because we say, I see, I hear, all this thing.
But this is the observer in the equation.
Yeah, when you look for who's the I that's seeing, all you can say really is that they're seeing. There's no I that's seeing. So,
no, but the process of seeing and thereby some kind of consciousness seems to
produce
influence reality. Yeah?
It produces a sense of I. This just seeing itself, because as soon as you wake up and there's seeing, there's some sense of that somebody is seeing. Mm-hmm. But again, this is interesting about what the scientists are finding, because if they flash a light and they measure how long it takes until a person is aware that they've seen the light, it's 1/3 of a second. So what the sages are telling us, that everything we see, hear, or sense is in the past. It's 1/3 of a second back. And our brain loops forward and makes it seem like now. And the same thing with decision making. By the time we've made a decision, it actually happened in the brain before we were aware that we were making a decision, you see. So this whole sense of I is actually just a process that life has to deal with. You could say it makes these body forms a little bit more capable of dealing with our environment, which makes us in this slot of time have a better, you could say, handle on this environment. But what's also happened through it is that we bring ourselves as a species to the verge of extinction. Yeah. So I'm saying in this particular slot of time, it's been some advantage. But if we don't wake up, you could say, we're very fast taking ourselves down the road where, as a species, we will not be able to continue. So it's given us some advantage for a time, and it's also given us the possibility to be aware of awareness, to be aware of this gap in thought, you could say, and recognize it for what it is.
So you would say that what you're doing is exploring or helping people explore the sense of I, where it stops and where it is.
Yes, to see directly for themselves who they are, so that they have the direct experience of peace, love, bliss, the sense of oneness with everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, in the
not
past,
as a belief system or anything, just as a direct experience.
Yeah. There are many paths to achieve this. When you can. In India, they believe if you stand on your head and become a sadhu and do all kinds of exercises or not exercise, or you give up, I don't know, food or whatever, you can reach this state. There's other people that say...
The thing is actually that once you actually experience this state, you see that nothing that you did actually caused it to happen. It's causeless.
Yeah, but still, people like Buddha went out in the woods for 7 years.
And what he saw when he realized was that all of it was wasted. So that's why the sages and saints all they speak about this direct, instant recognition, you see. It has to happen in an instant, and it's grace, basically. So what happens is, people that have this interest, somehow, you see, this interest comes in their minds. Like we were speaking, we're all like these TV, you see, this thought comes in our mind, I want to be free. Or even without this thought, by some accident, you see, we take some substance, or we happen to bump into somebody that we haven't seen, and some experience happens. And we recognize something, and the taste of it is like being home, of, man, I don't need anything. I'm just, who I am is complete. There's nothing needed, you see, there's no lack.
Not happiness in a material sense, but
yes,
you're
just
fine.
Absolute peace, absolute contentment, you can say. Because in deep sleep we don't have a sense of needing anything, you see, but it's a dull state. So what we're talking about is waking up from the waking state, you see.
Now, all this sounds terribly like Gurdjieff, who said we are really 99% of the time we're robots, we're automatic devices that respond to stimuli.
Genes plus conditioning. That's what I was coming back to.
And he also described the sense of self-awareness as really not the best thing we had. He spoke about the Kunda buffer thing in one of his books, and was like, hey, we got it, and it really is between us and the direct experience, this self-awareness.
Yes. This is the thing, because everything is referred to this I am, the sense of I amness. And the sense of I amness actually is an activity that's measuring and naming everything, you see, my relationship with everything. So when you cut every relationship, for an instant, you cut it. That's what actually Krishna was talking to Arjuna about, was to cut all relationships for an instant only. Then what's ever present, ever real, shows its face in a direct experience. And this cannot be spoken about. Unfortunately, it cannot be spoken. It can only be pointed to, and somehow.
Now, the funny thing is that many people in history, even Buddha has said, yeah, okay, you have to experience it, and then still people are so desperate to find this, or they got an inkling from it through LSD or Zen meditation or sitting on a mountain or whatever, meeting a person, near-death experience, and then we go searching, and sometimes we search like crazy. We search. And my wife used to say, because I searched all over the world, she said, why are you crazy? It's just in your backyard.
Yes.
Go sit down and experience it.
Yes. So now, you see, now we come to this instant. Here we are, we're speaking. Now, you leave your intentions, any wanting, any effort, and you just come to this moment. Here. Now, what do you need in this instant? Right here. What's your experience of what you need right here? When you stop. You don't run to the future, you just stop here. Now, what's your experience, you see? See, nobody advises us. Nobody advises
Isaac, I can do this for camera, but I will flip out into a total weird state. I just, in this moment, experience some stages that I know lead to this state of oneness, because I open up to it, as you say. I see your face change. I go through all kinds of things in my mind are quite like falling away, like shells. Okay, so I let go of my sense of time, because you are of all times, and I'm probably of all times. And I let go of all these things, and then I arrive to some and since my mind still not is able to understand what I'm seeing or feeling, it will still, I say, put personal images, which might be that I see you in a golden light or something like that. But even that is my last remnant of human projection, really.
Very beautiful, very nice what you speak.
So but I know that, but now I know that I don't need Isaac Shapiro to experience that, but still many people here in Amsterdam are coming to listen to you. You do satsang, which basically means you...
So what happens is, as we're speaking, you see, I'm pointing at this thing. I'm pointing at who you are. And as we sit here, then your experience starts to, like if you want to know where the moon is, you see, you have to go to somebody who knows where the moon is. If you go to someone who doesn't know what the moon, they're going to confuse you. They'll say, oh, it's somewhere, you see. But someone who knows where the moon is, I'll say, there it is, and they'll point directly. Then you have to look to where they're pointing. So now what we're doing here is you come here and we sit down, and I'll say, okay, good. I'm pointing now at your own self. at consciousness itself, you see. And so we start to just clear through any misdirections. And all that this body-mind is a finger pointing at the moon. This is the direction to look, you see. So when people come, we speak, and the words are just pointing at this. My own experience, direct experience, is that I am consciousness itself. I am that. So this also is communicating somehow, because we can't, it's not through the senses even.
No.
But somehow people experience it in their beingness, and grace happens. And you can't say that anybody's doing anything, but by itself, they have the direct experience. And I don't even know how it happens, because it's not through anything that I do. It's just somehow
you are in that state and that trance. And it's an energy that you radiate.
And even this is a way of speaking. It's not because there's no you and there's no me. There's just somehow it happens. I can't say.
Now, I haven't looked at you the way I sometimes could look, but I've seen this with other teachers. Let's call them teachers. Like someone, Maharishi Maharaj Yogi. I was with him, and Andrew Cohen and some other people, and I see that what it is they say. Actually, what they said didn't make much sense, and I thought it was a lot of bullshit. But they had a capability to make me see them and the world around them inside, like a golden light. And I've seen that at times really specific, that people around him had like this golden glow over them. It was like he was tuning, like with some light. I also realized that there was a very nice feeling for these people, that they would go to this man to see their reality in gold. Yet I decided for myself, I said, well, gold is a very nice color, but we have red and we have blue and we have green. I like those colors too. Reality is fine enough for me. I don't need this this bath in consciousness or in golden light or whatever you call it. It's fine. I can understand people need it. Maybe they have some problems.
See, it's you know, traditionally they say that if you want freedom, what it means is, they say that Rumi put it so beautifully. He said you have to want it more than a drowning man wants air. You see? So, and it's not that it takes any special person for that. And it doesn't, it's like, you know, as long as we're going along and we're satisfied with our illusion, you could say, then there's not the impetus to want to really see truth. So what happens is people keep trying to make a bargain with truth. They say, look, I'm interested in finding peace and love and this oneness, but first I want to find the perfect woman, and first I want to get the right car and all this thing. So what happens is, as long as, just in this moment, if your mind is occupied with anything else, you see, this
you would call this identification with some goal?
Yes, because look, what this goal is about is we think it's going to bring us happiness.
No, I don't think that the thing I think will bring me happiness, but they might be necessary for, well, a game to unfold of my life. I have to do things like I'm doing here, a television interview, which I do because I think it might help some people. It might help me. It might help you. It's for me an inevitable thing to do. Yes. And I don't expect instant happiness out of this.
So this is happening now, and what happens is. We were speaking here a little earlier, and I was speaking about coming to this instant, even leaving this projection of golden light, anything, you see, any projection aside.
Oh, I'm willing to leave any...
Yes. In this instant, what's your experience? This is what we're pointing to here. In the instant, when you leave everything. So for 1 microsecond, you see, 1 nanosecond, 1/100th of a second, you leave everything. You don't pick up any perceptual framework, any relationship, you see.
And I don't have to give up that I breathe this way and I look this way. I don't have to stand on my head.
No, don't have to do anything. Just for this nanosecond, you make this experience. You see what's here when you don't make any relationship to anything. See, you have to do this.
Yeah. Yes, well, to respond to Rumi, Kabir always talks about the friend.
Yes.
And when he says leave space for the friend in your house, he really means this.
Yes.
Open up to it. Leave space for God or whatever we call
whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Now.
Yes.
You know,
This
not
instant.
tomorrow, not yesterday.
Yes.
Open your house now, and what you
Yes.
say is the same.
Yes.
Is be here now.
Yes.
Baba
See,
Ramdas has
Yeah,
said that.
and this is the trouble. People say be here now, and people don't really have a sense of what that means, because be here now. Look, I'm here now, and my senses are here now. But it's not this that we're talking about, you see. We're talking about something beyond the senses. We're talking about touching that which is activating the senses, which is living you could say. Which is
Now, you experience this with LSD. These days we have brain machines that kind of tune your brain activity down, and you come very close to near sleep situations. But
yeah.
there's a lot of technology that could help us, and how do you see that in relation to this nowness?
You see, well, I've tried a few different technologies. I haven't tried this particular one that you're speaking about. For myself, I was interested in attention, I could say. I became aware that attention was all that I had to give anything. Basically, that's all that we have to give anything. So there's different qualities of attention, and basically every child wants attention. And in fact, if they don't get loving attention, they'll do anything to get some quality of attention, whether it was
Hitting you,
a smack or whatever,
you.
yeah, so that they get some attention. So we all want attention. And what we do is we develop these personalities to try and get some way of getting attention, you see. This is what it boils down to. And so I was doing this kind of work, and my interest was to try and have the world be a more beautiful place for everyone to live in. And
Now, responding to that, Thomas said, or according to Thomas, Jesus said, heaven is now. This is
Heaven
not
is now,
in the
yeah.
afterlife.
Yes.
Heaven is now.
yeah. So that whole...
Well, why do you want to make it more beautiful as
so
it
that,
is?
Yeah, well, that whole impetus came from my experiences with LSD, where I experienced this feeling of unconditional love. And then I would look around and I'd see, geez, everybody's living very different lives than what I know what I've experienced.
Yeah, but
And
is that
so-
true? I'm beginning more and more to see that that's not true, that people are doing their dance, and their way of living might be very clouded. And for
Yes.
us looking at it,
Yes.
it is very clouded, and they
Yes.
do all psychological tricks and games and whatever.
Yeah.
But are they really not in themselves the gods playing?
They are the gods playing their own direct experiences that they're not happy, you see. They're not happy.
Yeah, but so
People-
maybe that
people-
serves their purpose.
Yeah, so we can look at it that way and say, and it's clear that it's that way, you see. People around the world are anxious, and they feel separate from what they want, from their loved ones, from God, whatever you want to call it. And this is the condition of most of the people on the planet. So this is going on, and most people don't even realize or recognize that it's possible to come out of this.
Okay, this is
So
where...
a very, very small percentage at this point
Yeah.
of people are starting to get the idea that it's possible to wake up. And in all
Is
the
that true?
in
Is
all
that
the
true?
big in all the big jumps in human history, like, you know, there wasn't fire around the planet. Then some people discovered it, and then at some point it became the norm everywhere, you see. Same thing with agriculture. This is what the archaeologists tell us, you see. There were these explosions in consciousness where a big shift would happen, and suddenly something would happen, and everywhere around the planet, in every culture, these things would appear.
Yeah.
So
So,
now-
like,
So
book
now
printing would happen at the same time. Some things would just
some things
happen.
would just happen, yeah. And so now we're finding that, you know, I mean, the history of enlightenment, or you can say, is not that old. You know, I mean, basically, as human beings, I mean, dinosaurs were around for 200 million years.
And,
And
our
then-
oldest record
and then
is Zarathustra, and maybe 4,000 or 5,000 years.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, and then human beings are only 2 million. Language only happened, the people are saying 30 to 60,000 years ago. 30 to 60,000. Now this I thought, what we're speaking about as intellect, people are now pinning that down to 10 to 12,000 years ago.
So what's next? What's next?
So this is the thing. So now we're coming here where there's a very small percentage of people that are interested, you could say, in enlightenment or freedom or truth. And we see some offshoots of this going towards religions, because religions actually are what come after an enlightened sage has lived. then when they're not around anymore, they get ritualized into religion. And then, so the essence of what they were speaking about becomes ritualized. So there's many people in this boat, but still, this direct experience of what the sages speak, it's becoming more interesting to a small, very small group of people.
Is that true? Sometimes I go out in the countryside and I see farmers or people working in the fields, and I have a feeling that sometimes these people are much more close to this experience than me living in the city where there's always noise and sounds and distractions.
They might be closer, but when you go into their lives and see how they're living, whether they have beliefs and opinions and judgments, and whether they're aware of who they are, that's not the case.
You really believe that there's a few people in the world? But is it growing?
I'd say that it's actually growing now, because you can actually speak what we're speaking about now, and people are interested. Whereas even 20 years ago, there was a very small interest in this. If you were into Zen Buddhism, you were a freak, you know.
Well, Timothy Leary just died, and he was, kind of put in with the trash like he was a wacko.
Yeah. So there's a few people that you could say are forerunners that have been interested in consciousness. And the trouble is, you see, like I had this experience with LSD, but I had never met a person that was actually realized.
Did you meet people like that?
So then I finally did meet someone.
Who was this?
His name is Pundaji. He lives in Lucknow. People call him Papaji or Pundaji, and his teacher was Ramana Maharishi. Not the Maharishi from TM, but he lived at...
Maharishi means actually great teacher.
Yeah, great sage, great teacher. Great seer. Rishi is seer. So Ramana realized himself at the age of 16, and then his silence was so powerful, people would come around him, and all their troubles would basically, while they were around him, their mind wouldn't move, because his mind was so
How do you
strong.
explain this? Does something emanate from his mind that transfers to other people?
Like we were speaking about this transmitter analogy, you could say. When you're around someone who's troubled, you'll experience their troubles, you see, in your own body-mind system. When you're around someone that's very peaceful, and in fact, if their mind is absolutely peaceful, it becomes quite difficult for your mind to function around them. So this happens a lot in satsang. People come and they experience peacefulness. Their troubles of the day, of their life, literally when they look, they're just not there. So
does that help people? Now you say you've been taught by these are your masters, your teachers?
Yeah.
And some people that will come to your satsang will experience something very special, but do they go home and change their life because of that?
I'd say some people, it's absolutely, everything changes for them. This discovery of who they are for me, I can say, what happened was the missing piece. Because I was speaking about attention, and what I realized was, when I went to my teacher, he said, well, why don't you bring your attention to the truth of who you are? And it never had occurred to me. It just simply hadn't occurred to me. And as soon as he said it, then I started to play with it. And what I noticed was that as soon as I kept quiet, or in this place in myself that is always quiet, I experienced peace, and I experienced happiness. And as soon as my mind started to run, to want anything or like this, then I experienced some kind of anxiety, some kind of trouble. So by itself, as I was watching this process, as I was watching the tricks of my mind, as I saw different aspects of it revealing themselves, they just fell away, basically. And what's left now is just this beingness, I could say, that isn't interested in running after the projections of my mind.
But still calls himself Isaac Shapiro.
Well, answers to that name, of course. There's always some identification as long as there's a body left.
Okay, so in this conversation with Isaac Shapiro, we talked about awareness, consciousness, and how you, in your satsang, share that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very good.